This conference will now be recorded.
Alright, so in the last session, we were talking about accounts payable and accounts receivable. We discussed about the overall process related to accounts payable and overall process related to accounts receivable, both from the finance point of view and at the same time logistics point of view. When we are talking about logistics point of view, we were specifically talking about perspective and SD perspective. That is where we discussed about FIMM integration process flow, FISD integration process flow. Now what we will do is we will try to understand how configuration is maintained for accounts payable and accounts receivable and how basic transactions in vendor account, customer account are created. So first thing what we will do is we will try to understand accounts payable configurations. Now, in order to do the accounts payable configuration for whatever the client, for whatever the projects that we are working, we need to make sure we are able to understand the client existing business process related to accounts payable. When we are talking about existing business process related to accounts payable, make sure how their vendor accounts are currently managed and how they are dealing with the vendors. Basically, whenever we talk about vendor, it is all about purchases, how the purchases are happening, and how your accounts payable department is working, how masters are created, how transactions are recorded, what kind of reconciliations that they are doing at the month end, what kind of reports that they are preparing for vendor at the month end. All these activities we need to make a list, make a note of this from the business process point of view, which is explained to us in detail by the users. Based on the user business process explanation understanding, we have to define the configuration approach or the configuration steps, scenarios that are to be included in your accounts payable. In general, majority of the times, whatever you talk about the configuration, your configuration is supposed to deal with three activities. Point number one, you have to understand what is the master data. We need to understand what is master data. Point number two, what are the transactions, and point number three, different reports that are used. Here when we talk about these points, we need to make sure when you're talking about master data, when it comes to accounts payable, what master data is created. Basically, we are all aware that for accounts payable we will be creating vendor master data. Now here we will be writing something called vendor. Now, is vendor alone is sufficient or any other master do we need? Since we are working on S4HANA system, along with vendor, you also need something called BP. You need vendor, you need BP also, business partner. Make sure how vendors are currently created. When we say how vendors are currently created in the existing business process, in order to create a new vendor, what is the procedure? And how do they decide and how are they proceeding to make a new vendor account in the SAP? Based on the existing system, you are going to do a mapping how the vendor master is created in SAP. It is not that you are going to straight away create the vendor by logging into SAP, opening the respective T code. First, have a process that is used in the existing process, in the existing org, and in SAP. Going forward, are they wanted to make any changes in the existing process, or they are going to follow the same procedure in SAP as well? Here you need to understand master data. Point number one, vendor. Point number two, BP. With respect to system perspective from S4HANA point of view, make sure you are aware of what is vendor account, what is business partner, how vendor and business partner are related to each other. This we must understand from the technical perspective within SAP. After that, make sure when you are creating the vendor master data, how BP is created, how vendor is created, how we are connecting. To do this activity, what information you require from the client and how are we putting those questions and how are we collecting the data. Accordingly, make sure while creating the vendor master data, do they need any additional information to be made mandatory? While creating the vendor master or while creating the business partner master, Is any information mandatory or any specific field that they are looking for? Let's say we want to update some other information related to vendor. How do we capture it? Once you understand while creating the vendor, this is what the information being captured, and make sure all this information can be updated or recorded in SAP. Once this is done, you are clear with the master data. Vendors are created, how vendor is created, if there is any approval process mechanism, what points are to be used as part of verification, everything you are going to consider. After that, you are going to talk about transactions. Basically, whenever you talk about a transaction to a vendor, we are going to do the purchasing transaction and then payment transaction. When we are making purchases, how purchase entries are recorded, what accounting entries are processing, we need to make a note of journal entry also. When you are doing a purchase, how you are purchasing, what scenarios do you have in purchasing, what are the accounting entries that you are recording in each of the scenario. Similarly, when you are making the returns, how your returns are handled to a vendor, what accounting entry you are processing for vendor returns, and how you are settling to the vendor. In short, settlement is represented by your payment. How are we processing a payment? Are you processing a payment by cash or by bank? Accordingly, you need to decide what other settings are to be maintained. Finally, when it comes to your reporting, in the transaction, I'll say invoices, returns, and then payments. After this, we need to understand the reports. What kind of reports are executed or what kind of reports your client is currently using in accounts payable module with respect to vendor. Maybe vendor invoice listing or vendor credit memo listing, vendor payment reports, vendor master data list or vendor aging report or days payable outstanding, any other report that is specifically used in accounts payable team or accounts payable module, client will tell us, and they will conclude this is how our current accounts payable team is working. These are the activities that are performed in the existing business process. When we move on to SAP, we want to perform the same business process activities in current system, in the current accounts payable, whatever we are following. They say that we are currently facing some issues, some challenges. These kind of reports we are not getting. Users are creating the entries, but these kind of data entry issues are happening. Users are giving wrong information, which is making us to do a lot of the reconciliations to ensure data is accurate. We are also making duplicate payment, duplicate masters are created, controls are missing. All these points we are going to consider as part of business process controls. How are we going to bring this business process control? We have to make a note of it. Based on the overall or at least thorough high level understanding of your client accounts payable process, then you are going to decide, make a documentation, process document in short. Based on this, ensure that you are able to do the configuration. When you are making the configuration, you are strictly supposed to refer the business process that is defined. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, so whatever the reports that the client is currently using, we need to make sure if those reports are available in standard SAP. If yes, what is the report? If those reports are not currently available in standard SAP, how are we going to develop those reports, or how are we making the client to use or get that information? Are we proposing them to use standard SAP, or are we making to use any customized report? If it is a customized report, how do we get the requirement? How do we get a new report developed with the help of a technical consultant? We need to make sure we are able to meet the requirement. Now, after understanding that these are the points that you need to understand, now these points are common for every client, and make sure before you get into the system, try to understand business process. With that understanding, when you're stepping into SAP, first point, whatever you're going to do with respect to configuration, Make sure to do any configuration. We are going to access SPRO screen. Let me go to SPRO and then we will list out the configuration steps first. Based on the configuration step, we will understand what exactly we are doing in each configuration step, how we will get the data from the client. To do the configuration activities, go to SPRO, SAP reference IMG, and here financial accounting. Remember, when you're working in any project, you're responsible for the configuration that is part of either financial accounting or controlling. Any setting which is not part of a financial accounting or not part of controlling is not your activity. You have to inform the respective module consultant to take care of it. Strictly, you're not supposed to define any configuration apart from financial accounting, apart from controlling. Even though you know how to maintain the setting, what changes are to be made, it is strictly recommended. You are not supposed to do it because it is not in the scope of financial accounting or it is not in the scope of controlling. Anything which is not in scope of FI, not in scope of a CO, as a FICO consultant, you are not going to maintain those settings. You have to inform the respective module consultant to maintain those settings. They will do the setting. They will confirm you that yes, this configuration is now completed. Accordingly, you are going to do your configuration. If you have any dependency, if there is any error because of which you are facing, once this configuration is maintained by the respective module consultant, you are going to redo the testing. But don't do any configuration which is not related to FICO. Strictly not recommended because that will put you in unnecessary troubles. And remember, when you're working in the project with your user ID, you can maintain any module configuration. That does not mean you're able to do the config. You're not supposed to do it. You have to strictly stick to the point. Any setting which is related to FICO only, you will maintain it. Apart from that, you will inform the respective module consultant or you will get an email confirmation from your project manager or somebody to define the configuration. Okay. Now in the financial accounting, to define the settings related to accounts payable, you go to a setting called accounts receivable and accounts payable. Let me open this accounts receivable and accounts payable. Inside this, there is a setting called customer account. There is a setting called supplier account. Now we are talking about accounts payable. Accounts payable, according to us, is all about vendor. Now vendor is also called as a supplier. You open the setting called supplier. Inside the supplier, there are different settings. Let us open master data. If you open master data, sorry. If you open master data, you will find the different other settings. From these settings list, open the first one, preparation for creating supplier master data. If I open this, there are various settings you are able to see. And when you are working in any project, you are not supposed to configure everything one by one. We are going to maintain the configuration according to the client business process. And if you keep client business process aside, there is some standard configuration. Sorry. When I say standard configuration, irrespective of the business process, in order to make accounts payable work in SAP, there are certain settings that are to be maintained. Those settings are part of your baseline configuration, which means basic settings to enable accounts payable functionality. Those settings let us enable now. To enable or to maintain those settings, let us take out the setting name along with the transaction code. To enable the transaction code, go to additional information on the top, click on this, expand additional information. From this, go to display key. From this, click on IMG activity. If you click on this, you will see another column is updated by name of additional information. In this additional information, majoritarily last 4 digits is represented as transaction code. Last 4 digits we will consider as a transaction code. Now in this, there are some settings only we have to define as part of baseline accounts payable. Other settings are defined based on the specific business requirement. Some settings are common for client, some settings are exclusively applicable for specific countries. Does not mean you are going to define all the settings. First, we need to understand the business process. Accordingly, we need to decide to enable that business process what settings are to be maintained. Now let us maintain the settings that are mandatory for any accounts payable configuration. First setting is define account group with a screen layout rule for vendor. Copy this, come here, put this. I will write configuration steps. Configuration steps. This is your activity that is to be performed. Next, let me put the transaction code. Transaction code, we are understanding the last four digits, which is OBD3. Apart from this, we need to maintain next setting called number ranges for vendor account. I'll copy this, and this is your OBD3. So I'll put OBD3 here. For number range, it is XKN1. After defining these two settings, there will be third setting which we need to maintain. Third setting to be maintained is assignment of number ranges to vendor account group. Let me copy this. T code for this is OBAS. As per our logic, last four digit is the transaction code. I'll put this here and I will put OBAS here. After writing these three settings, we need to define further more settings as well. Now the further settings, before we talk, let us try to understand what we need to know before we define this setting. Now first setting that we are talking about here is define account groups with a screen layout rule. Whenever you are talking about account group, you are talking about vendor account group as we are talking about master data related to vendor. Accounts payable, it is related to define account group with screen layout rule. Forget about what is a screen layout rule. Inside the vendor master data, I will explain what is a screen layout. For now, we are talking about account group. What is your account group? Account group defines the nature of account or classification of a vendor. When I say nature of account or classification of a vendor, whenever you look at any financial statement or any balance sheet of your organization, you are going to look at your balance sheet representing something called accounts payable or something called sundry creditors. When you look at sundry creditor, when you look at accounts payable, you are talking about total amount that is supposed to be payable to the third parties or to the suppliers from whom we've received either goods or services. Now, according to you, everything is payable, but according to the company, they need the breakup of the payable. According to any organization, they need breakup of the payable. What breakup do they need? They want to know this is the amount that you are telling is payable. Now, how much is payable to what kind of a vendor from this amount? When you say how much is payable to what kind of a vendor, that is where you are going to segregate. How you are going to segregate? There is standard classification of vendors in most of the organizations. We will be understanding the same approach. If you look at your balance sheet, for example, I will write balance sheet here. In balance sheet, you will have liabilities, you will have asset. Now accounts payable or vendor is part of liability. Under balance sheet, let me write liabilities. Inside the balance sheet, under liability, you are going to write majoritarily. Accounts payable we will write, or we will write something called sundry creditors. This is what usually we will be writing in the balance sheet under liability side. Now when we are doing a normal accounting, this is fine. But when we are doing the accounting in any organization where you are representing balance sheet, your balance sheet is given to different shareholders, bank authorities, your auditors, different people will be looking at your financials. You need to make sure you are going to give the clear representation of your balance sheet. When you give clear representation of a balance sheet, make sure your payable is broken down into right or appropriate categorization. How appropriate categorization is made is, if you're talking about accounts payable, you may be splitting or you may be classifying your vendors based on the business needs and requirements. Majoritarily, your accounts payable, your vendors are categorized as, first one, I would say local vendors. You can also call it as domestic vendors. You can call your vendor or you can segregate your vendor as local vendor or domestic vendor. Secondly, you can also segregate as local, I would say foreign vendors. I can also say foreign vendors as import vendors. Third one, I can say one-time vendors. Next, I can say intercompany vendors. Fifth one, I would say intra-company vendors. Sixth one, let me write employee vendor. And based on the organization, they may also write something like third party vendor, or they can also write service vendors. Okay, they can also write plant vendor. Likewise, whatever the reporting requirement that they have, according to the reporting requirement, they will be segregating vendor classification. Now, you can classify the vendor from the financial reporting perspective and from the master data perspective. Now, as a FICO consultant, you are always going to prioritize the vendor classification or vendor grouping based on the financial perspective. When we say financial perspective, in your balance sheet under liabilities, how are you going to represent your vendors? Accordingly, you are going to create different vendor account groups. Now, assuming that these are the vendor account groups that are used in your client location, and the client had also asked these account groups are to be created, or this is how your balance sheet should represent vendor position liabilities. Now, no other go you need to represent in your balance sheet in this similar way. When you are representing the balance sheet in the similar way, there are 2 points. Point number one, you want to segregate the liabilities according to the nature of liability. To represent this, you are going to create a different vendor account group. Now, at each vendor account group level, you can also pull out the master data. Tomorrow, if I want to know how many foreign vendors do I have, tomorrow if I want to know how many foreign vendors do I have, I don't want to look at my foreign vendor account, or I don't want to take the total vendor transactions or the total vendor master list and then identify based on the country, whoever is in India is local, whoever is out of India is foreign. I don't want to do this kind of a manual intervention. Instead, I want system to segregate the moment I ask foreign vendor, system to give you the list automatically by one click. These things are possible only if your initial setup is done in a such a way. In a such a way, we mean to say, while creating the vendor account group itself, if there is a dedicated group for foreign vendor, while creating any vendor master data, we will ensure that the user is selecting the right account group for vendor account creation. Accordingly, while generating the report related to vendor master, your master data can be properly executed. Point number two, when you're generating a financial report, if you want to see what is your foreign vendor liability or how much we need to pay for the amounts or for the products or services that we have received from the imports, I can simply segregate my accounts payable based on the foreign vendor or based on the imports. Segregation you need to see from the report perspective. Report is always based on the master data, based on the transaction data. Assuming these are the categorizations that are received. Now, how vendor master data is created in SAP based on vendor account group. In order to create any vendor master, vendor account group is important. To create vendor account group, what information do we require? Point number one, we understood this point. Point number two, let us go to SAP and see, in order to create a vendor account group, how we are going to create it, what information system is asking. Let me open SAP. We are talking about the first setting, define account group with screen layout rule. Open this. When you open this setting, let me close this session. Those who are using parallelly, please do not open these screens. Okay, let me open this setting now. Now, these are the account groups that you are going to create. Now, even when you are working in any project, if you are doing the configuration, do not straight away come to the configuration screen. Don't click on new interest directly. Don't do this. Never do this approach. Never follow this approach. Always what you do is, any setting that you are maintaining in SAP, always remember the functionality will be tested by SAP first. When we say functionality will be tested by SAP first, in order to test the functionality, as we know, configuration is mandatory. To ensure that this functionality is working fine in SAP, some testing is performed by SAP. Whatever the testing is performed by SAP is based on the config. That is where you talk about standard configuration in SAP. Any configuration screen that you open, you will find some existing settings here. In short, in your account grouping, there are some account groups which are predefined in SAP. Even in your real system, it is not blank completely. You will have standard SAP account groups. Open any one account group. Now, why you are opening account group? To make sure how the account groups are to be created, and inside the account group, what information we need to produce. This is only to make sure that you will get an idea. This is to ensure that you will get an idea, so that accordingly you are going to take your requirement, accordingly you are going to do your configuration. Otherwise, whatever the way you are going to create may be correct, may not be correct. Always you need to refer the standard SAP configuration within the config screen itself. Then you will find an idea, okay, these are all the fields that we need to fill up. This is how settings are to be maintained. With that understanding, with that basic idea, proceed with your requirement. Now, in order to create a vendor account group, you need one account group code, which is 4-digit. Now, this 4-digit can be alphanumeric, and a description you are going to provide. Only the 2 points. One is account group identification, which is 4-digit alphanumeric. Second one is the meaning or the description. Now, same thing you need to come into your Excel sheet. Now, this information you need to update. Where do we update this information? We are going to update this information as part of your key data structure document or KDS document. Inside the KDS document, this information to be updated. When you are updating this, your client had given you this requirement. Accordingly, you are going to freeze what will be the account group. Assuming that I am working as a consultant, now I was given, or I was told that create this 8 account group. Fine, I know how to create the account group. I'll come to SAP, but what is the code that I am going to put for this? Local vendor. Now, for each and everything, I should not ask my lead, my senior consultant, or I should not ask the client or the user every now and then. Shall I put local vendor 0001 or local LO vendor VE LOVE love? Can I put? No. Your client say no, it doesn't seem to be good. You put something like this or something like this. This will be a never ending story. Everybody will tell their own opinion, their own view, which may not be in line with the business process. To avoid these kind of things, you are going to freeze some logics. When you say you are going to freeze some logic, you are going to define some naming convention for it. When we say you are going to define some naming convention for it, either you are going to create vendor account group with completely numeric or completely alphabet or alphanumeric. Majoritarily, what we will do is we will be creating with a numeric account group. Numeric in the sense 1 series, 2 series, 3 series, 4 series, likewise 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000. Likewise, account groups will be created in the real environment, not alphanumeric. Normally, we don't use it. In some clients, you will be using it, but majoritarily, you will be proceeding with 4-digit numeric code. Let's say I am going to create something like 1000 here. Now, based on the availability, we will replace it. First, we are understanding how you are going to map it when you are in a project. I will say this is 1000. I am going to take 2000. Accordingly, I will be deciding like this. Like this, I am going to decide it. Now, when I decide this, we assumed that, okay, this is fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 series I have given. Now, at this point of time, I am fine with it. But later on, what if your client is adding 9th one, 10th one, 11th one, 12th one? Your client had added additional account groups as well. Now, is this logic going to meet the requirement or not? You need to consider. Now, 8 series is there. If it is 9, you can put 9000. If it is 10, I cannot put because 1000 is duplicating. Now, if you see, this is 1000, this is 1000. For 1100, I am able to put like this. For 1200, I am able to put like this. Now, I am not convinced with it because I am not able to form a unique logic, unique numbering in case in future, if you are increasing the number, is this logic going to work or not? It's not that today you are going to think, today it's fine, you will proceed with it. Tomorrow when problem comes, we will see. No, that is not something that you are going to proceed as a consultant. As a consultant, you have to anticipate. You have to predict. Today you find you have only 8 groups. What if in future you will add 5 more groups? And you will not be able to use the sequence. So instead you may decide, okay, this 1000, 2000 is not going to work out. Instead, let us go with a logic. 1100, 1200, 1300. If I try to put in this way, probably we are able to meet the requirement. If I say that we are able to meet the requirement, after 19 I am going to take or I am going to get into 20. Then how you are going to freeze this? How you are going to handle these kind of things? In future, you have to think at the beginning itself. Otherwise, there is no logic for it. So whenever you are defining any configuration, it's not about what you are doing inside the setting, add a new entry, put ABCD, write a description, save it. It is not the configuration. It is all about what naming convention you are taking and how do you make sure that this is logical. So that is where you are going to put a logic, and later on, whether you are there in the project or your company is supporting or the client had opted for another company for support, they will also be following the same way. If somebody is changing it in between, when it comes to reporting, when it comes to the transaction posting, this will create unnecessary confusion because data is not consistent. There are a lot of inconsistencies. These inconsistencies will create a lot of manual interventions, lot of manual efforts to finalize your reporting at the end of the month. Now understand, this is how you have to define it. Now I am going to take only 8 here. I am going to take only 8. Now for time being I am putting 1100, 1200, 1300. Now this account groups, whatever you are going to create, you have to see at what level are we going to create it. We need to see at what level are we going to create it. Assuming that you are having a company codes, let's say 5 company codes you have. I say company code number 1, CC1 is in India, company code number 2 is in US, company code number 3 is in Singapore, company code number 5, I'll say this is in Australia, company code number 5, I'd say this is in South Africa. I will say these are the company codes that you are currently holding. Now, when you are going to maintain the settings related to account group, are we going to create separate account groups based on each company code, or our account group is common for all the account group, all the company codes? We need to decide. If you go to the setting where the account group is defined, in this account group screen, you will not find anywhere a field called company code, which means account group is not created at company code level. Account group is not created at company code level because there is no company code here. Point number one, it is not created at company code level. Straight away, when it is not created at company code level, you need to make sure if it is not created at company code level, whether this is assigned to company code. Now, after that, you need to see the configuration. In your configuration step, did we write anywhere account groups are assigned to company code? No, we did not mention anywhere account group assignment with company code. In short, your account group is not assigned to company code also. Straight away, you need to remember whenever you are creating any account group related to vendor, this is created at client level. At client level, it is valid for all your company codes, irrespective of the country. Whether your company code is in India or it is in any part of the world, any country that it belongs to, account group that you are creating for the vendor is commonly valid for all the company codes. According to your corporate, according to your company, according to your group policy, if there are only 8 vendor categorizations, irrespective of the company code, irrespective of the country, every company code, every legal entity will be working with these 8 account groups only. These are commonly applicable for any company code. In short, any company code can straight away use this account group. So while freezing the account group, you have to look at the group point of view. When we say group point of view, tomorrow another company code is not supposed to come in between, say that we need another account group. When another company code is telling we need another account group, as a consultant, straight away you will not take that requirement because you need corporate approval for it. You need management approval for it because this is the change which is directly going to affect your reporting. This is a change which is going to affect your reporting directly, as this is not company code level setting. If one company code from South Africa is coming, they are asking for another account group, they need to obtain the approval from the management. Along with the management approval, they need to send a request, and you will confirm that with your client project manager or the client, the approval authorized person, that this requirement is what we've got. Should we create it? If they say that yes, go ahead, please create it, there is a change in our corporate policy, group policy, we have decided to add another account group, only then you will create it. Somebody sent an email, somebody is asking us to create an account group, do not follow the approach, do not follow the instructions, do not make a mistake. You got a ticket, some client, some user told you, don't go and make changes directly. That approach, that way will put us in trouble. You should always take the confirmation whenever you are making changes in the existing configuration, especially if it is new implementation. Most of the chances, most of the times, you will have somebody above you to validate, to verify that what we are doing is correct or not. So if I am preparing, or if I am working on this accounts payable configuration, I am going to prepare the configuration document, I am going to do a testing, I am going to maintain all the other activities. At one place or the other places, if I do a mistake, will get caught. At one place or the other place, whatever the mistakes that I am making will get caught. On the other side, if I am not considering these activities, straight away I am proceeding to maintain the config, there are high chances that we will commit mistakes. Some mistakes may not be noticed at the early stage, but they may be noticed at a later point where entries or the transactions are already processed. Once some entries are processed, configuration changes are not possible. System will not allow us to make certain changes if entries are processed. So at what stage you are identifying the problem also creates another problem, because this is what they wanted, because entries are already posted, you are not in a position to amend it. So at what level you are detecting the problem also plays a crucial role. That is the reason straight away nothing will go to production system in SAP. First, what you are going to do as a consultant, you are going to define settings or configuration in development system. From the development system, you are copying the configuration to development testing client. Once you copy config to the development testing client, you are going to test it. When you are going to test it, this testing is called as UT or unit testing. As part of unit testing, you need to make sure you are going to execute test script or test scenario. What is a test script? What is the test scenario? As part of our initial business process requirement, we are going to document it. In every client, in every project, you will have the standard list of these activities. You don't have to worry about it. Whatever the company you go, whatever the project that you work, every company will have sample test script related to accounts payable, sample test cases related to accounts payable. In short, if you are going to work on accounts payable in SAP, what is the process flow of accounts payable and how you need to test each and every activity. Even from standard SAP, you have something called SAP best practices. In the SAP best practices, SAP will tell you what are all the cases that you have to test, what are all the business functionalities that are applicable here. First one, your test script always begins from the master data. Make sure you are able to create a vendor master. When you're creating the vendor master, do you have any specific requirements from the client? If you have any specific requirement from the client, while creating a vendor, make sure those specific requirements are taken care. Otherwise, I can simply put vendor name, whatever the mandatory field, I will save it, vendor will get created. But vendor requirement may be some other point wherein they wanted to update any specific field in the master data, which they wanted to see it in the report, or which they wanted to populate it in the transaction level. If these requirements are not properly considered, not taken into picture while doing the testing, at final stage where your client is actually testing it, they will raise all the defects. They say that no, this is not coming, this is not working. Now they are not testing whether they are able to create the vendor or not. They will actually take an proper or the real-time vendor, whatever the vendor that they are currently creating, that they are currently doing business with, that vendor they will take, they will try to update all the information related to the vendor, and they will try to process a transaction for that particular vendor, and they will verify whether everything is working according to their process requirement or not. In short, the way you're testing during your UT, the way client is testing during UAT may be different. Make sure you don't test in a different way. Test it from the business point of view, not from a consulting point of view. When we say consulting point of view testing, we are only going to see while creating the vendor, system is giving any error or vendor is created. That is your consulting testing, wherein you are only concerned about what are all the mandatory field. You fill some information there. You are least bothered about what information you are filling, whether it is related or not related. You will save it, vendor is got created. If I am the user while I am testing the system, I am not going to do like that. I am not supposed to do like that. No client, no user will do it. What they will do it, they will take any one vendor, literally they will take any one invoice copy. In that invoice copy, the vendor name, address, all the information will be updated. They will look at that invoice copy, they will type all the vendor name, address, everything, and then they will save it. Now they say that I need to capture this information related to vendor. Where should I capture? Now you will find a lot of fields on the system. You cannot just like that say you can put anywhere. Now when he is capturing something that tomorrow they want to see this information in the report. Is there any report this particular field is displayed? If yes, what is the report? If this field is not part of any report, then how do you handle it? So to that extent you have to go and see. At least we have to have these points in our mind, so that when you're talking to somebody, when you're getting the requirement, or when you're in any project, you can accordingly think that okay, these points is what I need to consider. Okay, now coming back to this, understand that vendor account group is client level setting. One time you create, any company code can use any account group. Any company code can use any account group. There is no restriction because this is created at a group level. Group level is nothing but at client level. All the company codes of your client will use the same account groups of the vendor. Now for every vendor account group, you need to make sure that one identification is created. Majoritarily, the identification is 4-digit numeric code. So one numeric code identification you are going to create it. The logic is supposed to be like, if you are adding further more entries in future, will this logic work or not? The numbering should be in a sequential order in a logical manner. Accordingly, you need to freeze whether you are going to segregate based on the first digit or based on the second digit, based on third digit. So here we are segregating based on the second digit, as everything is starting from 1. I am segregating this with the second digit. If you see, second digit in every number is different. In first it is 1, in the second digit is 2, in third it is 3. Otherwise you can also create 1000, 2000 like this. Whatever the approach that you are following, it is fine, but make sure you are clear with why we are doing like this, and then you are convinced with it. In future this will not create any problem. After writing this is your account group, and account group description we have listed, and then you are directly going to save it. After creating account group, we need to make sure number range for vendor account group is also created. When you talk about number range for vendor account group, now this I'll say account group, and after account group you have something called number range. When you talk about number range, we are talking about how you are going to identify the vendor number, because according to you everybody is a vendor. Local vendor is a vendor, foreign vendor is a vendor, one time vendor, everybody is a vendor. But by looking at the vendor number, I need to make sure that this vendor is this nature, this vendor is this nature. This is exactly similar to your vendor, your GL. When we are creating a GL account group, everything is a GL account, but we are segregating within the GL account based on multiple dimensions. Like, first classification is whether it is P&L account or balance sheet account. Within balance sheet, whether it is asset or liability. Within asset liability, whether asset starts from one series or two series. Once you differentiate like this, based on the first digit of your GL account, we are able to identify whether the GL account is related to asset, liability, income or expense. In this similar logic, you have to bring one sequence here. Now you can put any logic. Now, as we all know, whenever you talk about number range, every number range will have a character limitation in short length. Your account group, you have decided 4-digit character limitation. Similarly, number range. When you're talking about number range, what is the length of account number that you want to put for your vendors? Do you want to identify vendor based on 3-digit code, 5-digit code, 8-digit code, 10-digit code? Okay, so majoritarily 6-digit code will be used for vendor. Most commonly, we will be using 6-digit code for vendor. If your number of vendors are more, your company is spread across multiple countries. If your the business is spread in multiple countries, even 6-digit number may not be sufficient. You may be proceeding with 7-digit code, 8-digit code, because as we understood, vendor is not common at company code level. Vendor account group is common for all the group level. Any country, any company code will be sharing the same account group, similarly same number range. Make sure you will not be falling short of number ranges in future. So avoid creating short length like 3-digit vendor code, 4-digit vendor code, 5-digit vendor code. Do not create it. For practice purpose, it is fine, but do not remember like this. Do not remember like this. I mean to say, whatever we practice, we normally try to understand. We normally try to keep only those points in our mind, but do not put those points in your mind. You can practice, it is fine, but do not remember in this similar way. So assuming that you are going to identify your vendors with a 6-digit, just an example. If you are identifying with a 6-digit, what is the logic again for the vendor? When we say what is the logic again for the vendor, you need to make sure, if it is local vendor, how am I identifying, or how do I know that this particular vendor is a local vendor? Again, I am dependent on number range. I would say my local vendor will start from one series. Similarly, I will say my foreign vendor starts from 2 series and then 3, 4 likewise in the sequential order. Now here what we are going to understand, what we are going to tell the system that whenever you are talking about local vendor, your local vendor is always identified based on the account group 1000. When a local vendor is created, vendor number will be starting from 1 series. Similarly, when you're talking about, let's say, employee vendor, you are going to create a 6 series. All the employee vendor number will start from 6 series. The moment you look at the vendor number, you don't have to know what is the name of the vendor. By looking at the vendor code, you can say this is employee vendor, this is foreign vendor, this is one-time vendor, this is service vendor or intercompany vendor, whatsoever. How you are going to identify based on the code? What is the code? Whether it is starting from 1 series, 2 series, 3 series, or based on the account group. These logics is what you have to understand. You need to set up at the beginning of every project for any client. That is where your configuration knowledge, your implementation experience will come into picture. And all this is something that is to be documented in a document called KDS. There is something called KDS, key data structure. In key data structure, you are going to maintain a table called accounts payable or vendor grouping. In accounts payable vendor grouping, you are going to put like this. Account group, you are going to put this, and the identification 1000, description of this 1000 will be this, and the number range to be used is this, and length of number. I would say 1 star I'll put, and I am going to say 4 digits, or I'll say 6 digits. When I say 6 digits, so it will be 1 followed by 5 zeros, 1 followed by 5 nines. Same logic that we used for account number range for GL. Similar logic here also. Just you need to identify what is the logic here. I may simply put number range interval also 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Account group is 1000, number range interval is 10, number range is 1 followed by 5 zeros with 1 followed by 5 nines. In short, 1 series. After doing the second setting, the third setting is assignment of number range to account group. Now assignment of number range to account group is nothing but connecting number range with account group. Reason why we are connecting is at the time of vendor name creation, at the time of vendor number creation, you are not representing any group. Similarly, at the time of group creation, you are not representing any number range. Make sure, since these two are created independently, you need to join to these two by additional setting called assignment. While doing the assignment, you are connecting a number range with the account group. After this, important thing that you need to consider is reconciliation GL account. After that, important thing is reconciliation GL account. Which reconciliation GL accounts to be mapped for these account group? Now we are talking about, these are all part of your financial reporting in balance sheet. What GL accounts are you going to consider? Now to consider the GL account, this GL account is also part of your KDS document. When we say this is part of your KDS document, you are going to understand for local vendor what will be the GL account number. I would say I will be looking at my chart of account mapping. In the chart of account mapping, you are going to have an account group called vendors or accounts payable. From that vendor or accounts payable grouping, you need to pick one account group. Let's say if I go to GL account group which is created in OBD4. In OBD4, let's go to position. Inside the position, if you select chart of account, let's say Sony, chart of account 8, what is created with, who created this, what was the chart of account used? 8 PSI. 8 PSI. Yeah, 8 SON, I think. Yeah, 8 Sony. This is what we've used. If you take this chart of account 8 SON, this is what we've used, 8 Sony. And in this, you have to look at what is the group related to accounts payable. Now, accounts payable group is here, 241 series. This is the account payable group, which is 241 series. You need to take this GL account number 241 and I'll put this here. And when I put this here, I will make sure the GL account number also will be in the similar sequence. If it is GL account group ending with 1, I will make sure reconciliation GL account also ending with 1. Similarly, I will put this is ending with the appropriate length. So if you see, account group is 1000 for local vendor, number range interval is 10, number series is 1 series, 1 followed by all zeros, 1 followed by all lines. Reconciliation GL account also 241 is the AP series, last digit is 1. So that everywhere if you see it is identical thoroughly. Likewise, you have to put everything in the Excel sheet first. When you put everything in Excel sheet, after that you are going to review this. When you are reviewing the solution, this is called as your solution or the process mapping. When you look at it overall, you will say that okay, this is one, but this is some other number, this is some other GL account. Can't we make a logic to identify? Because otherwise I have to remember everything, which is very difficult task practically when you're working in a live environment. To avoid these situations, you should always understand in a logical way you are going to define it, so that when you understand or when you remember one point, the other points are automatically interconnected like this. Once you freeze all this information will be updated as a KDS document. We will have a common KDS document like this. In short, assume that this file itself is a KDS document. KDS document is an Excel sheet. In the KDS document, you are going to put a tab called accounts payable or AP. Within AP, you are going to put all the naming conventions, rules or logics that are to be included in accounts payable domain or in accounts payable module. We are going to put like this. Now considering this, when you are doing the configuration, you are going to look at the business blueprint document. You are also going to look at the KDS document. Most of the configuration is based on KDS document. Now this is what is updated and this information is agreed by the client as part of your business blueprint. Once this information is agreed by the client, when we are doing the configuration as a consultant, what you will do, you will come to this screen like this. Account group. Let me come back. Let's reconnect. And once you are in the system to do the configuration, you don't have to think too much on the configuration, because all the data, whatever is to be created, is pre-agreed, is approved by the client already. It's not that when you're doing the configuration, we are going to sit with the client. When you do the configuration, it's offline work. When I say offline work, based on the requirement that we've got, based on the solution that you have provided, based on the solution design document or business blueprint that you have shared and which is approved, according to the document, you need to develop the system. In that process, I am coming to this approach. Now currently I need to see the naming convention that I am following. Is this available or not? If it is not available, I can straight away create it. In real time, that will not be available, which means the same numbers are not created in SAP. You can straight away add a new entry. Whatever is described or whatever is predefined in your KDS, you can straight away do the config. But in the practice systems, whatever the logic that you are going to decide may not be available, because somebody else would have created similar naming for their company code practice. Do not think from that perspective, always see it from the real-time perspective. If you are in a project, how you are going to do it, understand in the Excel sheet first, because when you come to SAP, especially in the practice environment, we will get lot of deviation. do not get deviated. First understand the logic requirement, then go to SAP. If these codes are not available, you can change the logic, but do not keep the changed logic in SAP. Always remember logic you updated in Excel sheet. Okay, now let's come to SAP. Now whatever you are going to create, let us create it. Now how I am going to create here is, I will add a new entry, which means in one go I cannot create all the account groups, because no other go I need to create one by one. What I'll do, I am going to put 8S here representing 8 Sony. I will put 10. Now description, I am just going to put a copy of this. I'll not put everything, I'll only put local vendors. Now for every local vendor there will be a prerequisite. I'll say Sony local vendors. This is how I'm going to write it, and then I will put this is settings in a TR. If you are working in the implementation project, make sure you don't put everything in single TR. If this is related to accounts payable, you can create a new TR. In the new TR, put TR sequencing again. If this is related to FI, you put FI. So how you are going to put FI? I will say FI, and I'll put Sony vendor, not Sony vendor, Sony accounts payable baseline. Something like this. I will put a TR description and then I will save it. Tomorrow, if I want to see all the accounts payable related configuration, if I need to make any modification, I will make sure I will amend this TR. If I put everything in one go, I will not understand what setting is there. If I need to make, or if I need to make any modifications in a specific functionality, it is difficult because everything is in one go. That may create a problem. Always recommended, based on the functionality wise, you are going to create separate TR even when you are in a project. Put like this, click on save. Now to do this second one, now what I'll do, I'll go to next entry. For the second one, I'll put the naming as 20. I'll put local vendors. I will say foreign vendors. Now here I am typing. When you're in a project, you don't even have everything is predefined here in the Excel sheet. Control C here, go to SAP, Control V, press enter, and then save it. Now when I save it, now I'm not getting any TR. Reason why we are not getting any TR is I did not come out of the screen. When you are inside the same screen, when you saved the first time, it will give you a TR. On the same screen without coming back, when you try to add another record, when you click on save, directly it will get saved. Directly it is getting saved. It is not giving a prompt to select the TR. Reason, you did not come out of this screen, and at the first saving you have selected a TR number. Without coming back from this screen, whatever the changes you make, everything will be recorded in the same TR number. Everything will be recorded in the same TR number. Don't get confused. You are not getting a TR where it got saved. Do not get confused. It will be saved in the same TR which was used for the first time in this screen. If you wanted to get the TR once again, you just need to come out of the screen and then re-enter the screen. Now 2 I've created. Let me create the third one. 8S30. I'll put Sony. I'll say one-time vendors. Now only for one-time vendor we need to enable this one-time account. Only for the one-time account you can skip address check. When we talk about address check, there is one point you need to remember here. If this is not one-time vendor, for every vendor there is a unique address, because my master is different, your master is different. My master will have my address, your master will have your address, because in system you are separate, I am separate. When it comes to one-time vendor, you are same, I am same. Now how you are going to segregate you and me between the name and address? Whenever you select one-time vendor, it will ask whether you want to skip address check or you don't want to put. Normally you don't skip address check. Address check is mandatory. When person is changing, when the name is changing, address will also get changed. Press enter. Now when I click on save, I am getting a TR number because I came out of the screen, I re-entered the screen. I saved it without coming out from this screen. If I add another entry, it will not give any TR. Let me do it once again. I'll add another entry. Let's say 40. Let's say I will put intercompany vendor. For intercompany vendor, if I click on save, now you will see there is no TR number coming. It is directly getting saved. Reason you have not come out of the screen, it is getting captured in the same TR number. Like this, whatever the account groups that you have as part of your requirement, you need to just configure it by looking at the configuration content from the KDS document. Once this setting is maintained, next thing is to create the account number ranges. To create the account number ranges, this is the screen. Create number range for vendor account. Open this setting. Now when you're working on this setting, one point that you need to remember here is whenever we are working as part of the practice environment, number range screen is loaded with a lot of number ranges. If you see here, many people created different number ranges. Whatever the number range that you wanted to decide may not be available in the test environment. But keep in your mind, when you're working in any project, when you're defining this setting, the screen is completely blank. When I say screen is completely blank, whatever the number that you want, every number is available. You are free to use any number range. But here it is not like that. Number ranges are currently utilized. You need to make sure you are going to allot a number range which is not in place currently. To identify which is not in place currently, there is an option called, if you go to interval on the top left, it will give you a setting or it will give you an option to check free intervals. If I click on free intervals, this is giving a list of the document numbers or the number ranges that are not used anywhere currently. It is giving the number range that is not used anywhere currently. Make sure you will pick any one number range and you are going to allot it. For time being, let me assume that I am going to pick up this number range. I will select this. I will put a number range. Let's say I'll put S1 for this, because the coding whatever we have decided may not be available. If I am selecting 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 here, when you are defining in the project, you are going to put 10, 20, 30, 40 with the same number range from number to number. Click on continue. Now it is giving a message, an interval already exists with S1. So S1 is not accepted because somebody already created it. If I say S2 or if I say SO, it has accepted SO, and if I scroll down to S series, here is SO. Here is your SO. Make sure this number range is available and you will try to save it. This is what I am creating. Number range that we have used is 3001 to 3100. Come back. And how you are going to maintain it? You are going to maintain it based on the KDS document. Any number range, whatever you decide in the KDS document, is a blind copy paste activity in real environment. In practice environment, you have to break your head to identify which number range is not available, because people will be using numbers left and right. Don't get confused here. Just ignore it. If you are confused, any existing number range you can assign to your vendor account group for the practice purpose, because this confusion is not at all required. After this, the next setting that we did was assign number ranges to vendor account group. Open this setting, and here you have to go to position, and it is asking for vendor account group. Let's say we've used 8S10. This is what the account group that we created. 8S10 Sony local vendors, and the number range that we created was SO. Put the number range, click on save. This is the third setting that you need to define. After defining the third setting, there is one more setting that you need to define is tolerance groups for the customer and vendor. And now this setting we would have done as part of a baseline config only, but still we need to verify one more time. So let me put vendor tolerance group. This vendor tolerance group is created in OB-A3 transaction code. Let us go to OB-A3 screen. In OB-A3, you need to make sure for your company code this setting is available. Go to position, pick up the company code 8PSI. If you pick this company code and this setting is available, double click on this. Let's say Sony customer vendor tolerances. Some amount you are going to give, like 100 amount, 10%, whatever is less will be accepted from this. Now we don't use all these settings. System is only going to verify whether the setting is available or not. Make sure this setting is defined. Come back. And this is your fourth setting that you are defining as part of configuration. After the fourth setting, we are done with the accounts payable configuration with respect to vendor point. Accounts payable configuration with respect to vendor. Now vendor is also treated as business partner in S4HANA system. Since we are working on S4HANA system, make sure you are able to create vendor only if the business partner is created. Without a business partner, vendor cannot be created in S4HANA system. Similar to your vendor account group, for business partner also, account group, number range assignment will be there. So first we need to make sure business partner configuration is maintained. To do the business partner config, let us go to SPRO once again. From SPRO, not from the financial accounting, your business partner settings are defined in cross application component. Your BP configuration is part of cross application component. Expand this cross application component. Inside this, scroll down, you will find something related to SAP business partner. Open this SAP business partner. When you open the SAP business partner, you will find different settings under this, but we don't do all these settings. You are responsible only for business partner here. Open the business partner, because the business partner functionality is SAP standard predefined. Most of the clients in majority of the projects, you will be fine with the existing functionality only. One sec. Sorry. So the standard business partner functionality is used in most of the clients. So the standard settings, whatever we are defining here, only the same settings are defined for as mandatory setting in any project. Now, inside the SAP business partner, you are going to enter inside the business partner. Under that, you are going to define basic setting. Inside the basic setting, you are going to click on number ranges and grouping. Open this number range and grouping. In this, these two settings you need to maintain. First one is number range settings. So here I will put this. Now here let me add BP, because this is related to business partner. I'm just putting a heading called BP so that you can segregate. This setting is related to BP. For this, there is a T code called BUCF. I'm placing the T code BUCF here. And the second setting that you need to define is define grouping and assign number ranges. Copy this. If you see there is no T code for it, it's only displaying the table for it. Come down, put this here. Here also at the beginning I am going to place BP to understand that this is BP related config. For this there is no T code. Since there is no T code, let me put the path here. Now to put IMG path, what you do is do a right click on this setting. When you do a right click, you will get a pop-up. From that pop-up, select show path. If you click on show path, the IMG path will get displayed. Copy this IMG path, select it, and Control C copy. Come to your Excel sheet, Control V. The same thing you are going to do it when you are preparing configuration document. For all the configuration, whatever you are maintaining, you are going to define the configuration document. Inside the configuration document, you need to mention T code and IMG path. This is how you are going to take IMG path. Now for the previous one also, let me put the IMG path. Define number range, do a right click, copy this, and I'll put the IMG path here. These are the two settings that you need to maintain first. Now let us define the two settings, whatever we've defined now. First setting is define number ranges, BUCF. Let us open this. Now one point we need to understand while defining the number range interval is whatever the number range interval that is created for the vendor account group, the same number range interval must be created for business partner also. In short, if your vendor number range is starting from one series, your BP should also start from one series. Whatever the BP grouping, whatever the vendor grouping that you are going to have should be identical to make sure BP number is exactly the same. Okay. Now for the vendor account group, what we did, we've created 3001 to 3100 as number range. Make sure if that number range is available or not. To identify if the number range is available, go to interval on the top, click on free intervals. If you click on free intervals, now I cannot see that 3001 to 3100. That number range is used by somebody else. Now I cannot create it. When the number range interval is not available, you cannot create it. If you create it, what system will do? For BP, separate number will come. For vendor, another number will come. So that should not be the situation. So it should always be straightforward. BP number, vendor number are exactly the same. If BP number is 200, vendor number is also 200. It cannot be different. No client, nowhere we will use that approach. Here also you are not supposed to use that approach. In order to avoid this situation, what I am going to do is, I am going to see what is the number range interval which is having identical number range here and there. For which I will go to another screen parallelly where we have created vendor number range. It was XKN1. Open XKN1. Minimize this a little so that you can see both the screens side by side. In this, go to interval. Go to change interval. From this, free intervals. Here also I will come to free interval. This pop-up I'll keep it here and I'll open this pop-up. I am able to match, or let me see if we can match any number which is available at both places. Here it is 8700 to 9999 is available, and here also from 8600 9999 it is available. So both numbers I can utilize here. So what I will do, I will change my number range. I am going to pick this up 8600, but in BP 8700 is available. What I will do is I am going to make this as, let's say, S1 was already there, S9 I will take. Okay, or a site I'll take. Continue. A site is available. I will come down. In S site, I am going to pick the same number. Like I'll take 8702. I will take 8750 only, because we will not be creating so many vendors. It's of no use. You are blocking unnecessarily the number ranges so that others cannot practice properly. I am taking only 50 numbers because we will not be creating 50 vendor also for our practice. Now remember one point here, whenever you create vendor number range in S4HANA system, as BP is in picture, your vendor number range is always external. Vendor number range is always external. Once you put vendor number range external, click on save. Vendor number range is 8700 to 8750. Here also I am going to pick up the same. I will put a site. Continue. Come down to S8. Here also same thing. When you are working in the real project, the complete screen will be blank. There will be no number range apart from what you are using. In the practice environment, there are existing number ranges that will create a confusion which one to be used, but do not get confused here. In the project, it is completely blank. Whatever you put, only that number is applicable. Now for a site, same thing, 8700 to 8750. BP number range is always internal. Internal means there is no checkbox for external. If this is enabled, this becomes external. If this is enabled, this will become internal. For internal, system is going to allot the number range. For external, we are going to allot the number range manually. Click on save. Now one point we need to make sure here is one setting we amended now. What setting we amended? We amended setting of vendor number range. This vendor number range, we need to make the change in the assignment. Go to the vendor account group. Here SO is what we have assigned. Change this to S8, which we have defined just now. Make sure vendor account group and BP account group, BP number range are exactly same and they are identical. First number range is created, next one BP grouping and a number range assignment. Add a new entry. I am going to put 10. 8S10. I will say Sony local BP. Same thing I will put long text also. I am going to place the same thing. Number range that I created was S8 and I am going to save this record. This setting is now defined. Come back one level, and after defining this setting, there is one more setting that you need to define. Currently what we did, we've created settings related to vendor, we've created settings related to business partner, but these two are created differently in the sense BP configuration was done separately, vendor configuration was done separately. While doing BP, we never assigned or we never brought vendor. While defining vendor, we never brought BP into the picture, but we are understanding that BP and vendor are interconnected. When I say interconnected, without BP no vendor can be created. Then how these are connected? You need to create one interface or you need to create one connecting point or integration between this. So which is represented as CVI. This CVI is another setting. To do the CVI setting, minimize your SAP business partner under the cross application component. If you minimize this, if you scroll down, you will find a setting called master data synchronization. Open this master data synchronization. Under the master data synchronization, open this customer vendor integration. CVI is nothing but customer vendor integration. If you open this, you will find another option called business partner setting. Inside the business partner setting, currently we are defined configuration for accounts payable. For accounts payable, you need to open vendor integration, settings for vendor integration. In this, there are two settings. This one. So role for now, because role is a standard, and the assignment keys, when you open it, there are two ways to do the vendor number mapping. These two ways are define number assignment for direction BP to vendor, or define number assignment for direction vendor to BP. Now we know that we may be working in two type of project. One is direct implementation of system. Second one is conversion or migration from ECC to S4HANA system. When you are migrating from ECC to S4HANA system, you are going to define vendor to BP logic. When you are directly implementing S4HANA system, we will be working on direction BP to vendor. Now, since we are not doing any migration, it's a direct S4HANA implementation. We are going to select BP to vendor. In short, whatever the BP number is allotted, the same BP number will become vendor number. Add a new entry here. Your account group for BP is, now if you are not able to understand which is what group, just open the drop down here. When you open the drop down, it will give you the heading of what kind of a grouping it is representing. This is representing a business partner grouping. In business partner grouping, what did we create? We created Sony local business partners. Select 8S10, and second one, if you open the drop down, similarly it is displaying vendor account group. For vendor also we created several things, but the configuration that we are currently performing is local vendor, local business partner, local vendor. The intention is to make sure BP number, vendor number should be exactly the same. In order to achieve, in order to get same number for BP, same number for vendor, point number one, vendor number range must be external, which we've already defined. Point number two, BP number range must be internal, that we already defined, and enable this called same number. When you enable same number for business partner and for the vendor, same account number will be generated. This is setting, whatever we did now is called as define number range assignment for direction this to this. Now this is also part of BP configuration only, and for this also there is no transaction code. I will place the IMG path for this. Right click, show path. I will select this, Control C, copy, and I'll place this here. Okay, this is the configuration that we've done now. Now this is all about your configuration, whatever we've done. Once this configuration is completed, we need to make sure the GL account master data is created for the reconciliation account. To do the reconciliation account, if you go to the Excel sheet, if I scroll down here, and this is your config, and there is master data requirement. There is a prerequisite master data before you create any vendor, that is your GL master data. Make sure GL account is created for accounts payable for the respective categorization of AP, local, foreign, third party, one time, whatever it is there. For everything, the respective GL account master must be created. If we come down, currently what we configured was local vendor. We need to make sure GL account for local vendor is created. Now after this, I will put GL master. Okay, create vendor reconciliation GL account, and this will be created in FS00 transaction code. And after this, let me go to SAP and I will access FS00 transaction code. In FS00, let me change the company code. For that, click on change company code. Our company code is 8PSI, 8PM Sony India. And in this, the GL account is currently not created. For that, let me select any one GL account first, and then I'll open the account group. For accounts payable, let me identify what is the account group. For accounts payable, we are working on 2410 is the account group. I will make sure I'll add a new entry, new GL account, 2410 1 2 3 4. This is what I am selecting. I'll say enter. Select balance sheet account because accounts payable is a liability, liability is a balance sheet account. In this account group, the logic is account group and the account number are identical. First 4 digits of your account group is representing first 4 digits of your GL account. After that, give short text. I will say Sony local vendors or say accounts payable local. So in the long text, I can put something like accounts payable local vendors. Short text, long text you input and then go to control data. Inside the control data, account currency is INR and select this reconciliation account for account type. Since we are creating this for accounts payable, AP is all about vendor. Select K vendor here and open item. By default, any reconciliation account is a open item management. You do not have to enable it separately. No other setting is required here apart from vendor. Currency. Come to the third tab, create bank interest. In this, give the field status group. For all the reconciliation account, you have to select G067, which is reconciliation account. Double click on this, enter, proceed to save. Okay, the GL account is now created. After this, the straightforward, you can create another thing called vendor master data. Now this vendor master data is created using transaction code BP. Now, before you do this transaction code BP, you need to take one scenario. One scenario, I'll take simple example. Let us take Sony India has purchased, let's say, pantry items from, I'll say, Reliance store for 5000 INR. Assuming that this is what the transaction that took place. From this transaction, first thing that you need to identify is who is the supplier. Now the supplier here is Reliance store. You need to make sure Reliance store supplier account is created. Now before you look at Reliance store supplier account, make sure Reliance store is created as a business partner first. Reliance store will be created as a business partner first. Once Reliance store is created as a business partner, we are going to extend Reliance store business partner as a vendor by assigning the appropriate BP role to a vendor. So first we need to make sure Reliance store is created as a business partner. Now I'll put step number 1, create Reliance store as a BP and assign vendor role. This is what you need to do in the first stage, wherein you are going to use a T code called BP. using T code BP. This is what you need to do to create this. Now, in order to create a vendor master in any project, just like that, nobody will create it. For vendor master creation, there will be a process, there will be a procedure in every organization. Typically, whenever a new vendor is created, either a new vendor approval form is mandatory or the invoice copy from the vendor is mandatory. In short, one vendor supporting document is required along with the new vendor creation form. There will be one application form or there will be a format to raise for a new vendor request in every organization, which is purely offline, either in the Excel sheet or in a printed paper. The user will write and they will give it to the appropriate person along with the approval. Based on that, new vendor will be created in any organization. Assuming that the required formalities are completed, the user had got the approval from the respective person. Now the person, whoever is working in the team as master data team, or in short, some people will have MDM or MDG, master data management, master data governance, or there will be a dedicated user who is authorized or who is having access to create the business partner vendor. That responsible or that user will get into the screen called BP. Now let me go to a T code called BP, which is nothing but business partner. When I open BP or business partner, this is how screen looks like. On this screen, make sure who you are going to create first. We are planning to create a Reliance store. Reliance store, is this a person? Is this an organization? Is this a group? Normally, we will not be creating a group. We will be playing between person and organization. Reliance group is not an individual. Reliance store is not a person. It is a organization. Click on organization, which means your business partner is an organization. Once you select this, you first get BP grouping. When you get the BP grouping, whatever the config we did for BP is appearing here. From this, select the appropriate grouping that you have created. What we created was local business partner. Select this Sony local BP. And after that, select the title. Company, this is coming as company because in the initial screen you created organization. Organization is represented as company. If you select a person, it will give you Miss, Mr, Doctor, whatsoever, which is applicable for an individual person. And the name you write, let's say Reliance Stores. Copy this and put the same thing in the search term. And whatever the official name or the legal registered name of that supplier, you have to put as per the invoice copy. No shortcuts, nothing allowed here. Whatever the legal name is mentioned on the invoice copy, the same name you have to put here. And then mention the address, street address. I'll say A5 street, house number, whatever is you can put. Address I'm randomly selecting. You need to select the appropriate address which is mentioned in the vendor invoice copy or in the vendor approval form. Whatever the address is mentioned, that is to be updated. After that, you need to select the communication language. This is majoritarily English. If you are working for any specific countries where local language is to be used, then you will be selecting the language as the appropriate one. After this, the remaining points are as of now not relevant. Payment transactions. So this one we will be talking about once we are on the vendor payment transaction. We will see what fields are relevant and why they are relevant. So to create the business partner, you just need name and address. Straight away proceed to save it. Now, when we are able to save the business partner, the number that we have got was 8700, which is what we configured in the BP number range. Now, once business partner is created, make sure you are able to convert your business partner into a vendor. by way of assigning vendor role to the business partner. How do you assign vendor role to the business partner is, select the same business partner, go to change mode. Top left you will find the mode of a screen. Currently this is in display mode. Switch between display to change by enabling or by clicking this icon. In any screen, if you want to switch between display change, same icon will be used, or F6 key. Let me click on change. When I click on change, now I am able to change BP role. Open the drop down. For BP customer, for BP vendor, the roles will start from FL. Go to F series. Here you have FLVN00, supplier financial accounting. Vendor you have two categories. One is FI vendor, this other one is MM vendor. For MM vendor or for PO vendor, you have to select FLVN01. For FI vendor, you have to select FLVN00. Currently, we are going to define financial accounting vendor or FI vendor. Select this particular grouping. When you select this grouping, name and address will be derived based on the BP number. Straight away go to a tab called Vendor General Data. Go to this tab, and in this tab you need to make sure vendor account group is automatically updated, vendor number is automatically filled up. Now how vendor account group vendor number is coming? It is coming based on the configuration called CVI, customer vendor integration. Whatever the setting we did, based on that setting, system is detecting if BP grouping is this will be the account group for vendor, and the number range is accordingly taken. How system is taking a number range 8700? Because for vendor number ranges we have enabled external number. So external number is nothing but whatever BP number is there, this number will become vendor number if you take external. Make sure these two are there. Once these are verified, straight away go to company code segment on the top. Click on company code segment. As we discussed, accounts payable configuration is dynamic or is at client level. You can define the vendor business partner and extend the same vendor code to multiple company codes. So you need to make sure this vendor is to be enabled for which company code. Sony India company code. For Sony India, 8PSI is the company code. Press enter. And in Sony India, which reconciliation GL account this vendor to be mapped. It will display the reconciliation GLs that are created. Currently we created only one, local payable, local accounts vendor. Select accounts payable, local vendor, press enter, and sort key you can select any one. This will be used to fill up assignment column for the vendor line item during the transaction posting. Other fields related to vendor master we will be understanding as part of different transaction posting to the vendor. Straight away proceed to save this. These are the minimum fields that is required to create a vendor master. Now changes are saved. Supplier number is updated. Now there is something called customer. In case Reliance Store is also a customer of yours, you are not going to create another master data. To the existing Reliance Store, you are going to assign customer role. When you assign the customer role, customer number will also appear here. Now this is your step number 1, and vendor number that you got was 8700. This is the vendor number or BP number that is generated. Once this is generated, you need to make sure the transaction is created. In order to create the transaction, you need to ensure that whatever you purchased, the appropriate GL master is created. Here we purchased pantry items. For pantry items, I would say groceries, or I would say petty expenses, or miscellaneous expenses, or pantry item only. Let me go to FS00 GL master. FS00. There are no GL account related to pantry expenses. I will see what are the account groups that we have for expenses. You have payroll expenses, salary, wages. I will be selecting something like non-operating expenses. 4220. I'll click on create 4220 1234 8-digit GL account. I'll take this GL account number. I will select non-operating expenses. Since we have not defined cost center accounting, I am not creating operating. This is 4220 non-operating expenses. I will put something like pantry expenses. Pantry expenses. Control data. Nothing is required, just sort key 001 to be used for the assignment column while posting the transaction. This will be G001 as usual. Click on save. Now master data related to the expense that you've purchased is available. Next thing is to make sure that the transaction will be recorded. Now to record the transaction, you have to go to F-43. When you are on F-43, this is where you are going to record vendor invoice, which is a direct purchase. For all the direct purchases, your vendor invoice will be booked using F-43 T code. Now document date, posting date, the date when you actually purchased from the supplier will represented by document date, because when you get any purchase invoice, your purchase invoice is always backdated. When I say backdated, if I am purchasing it today, I cannot account it today because I need to get the approval on the invoice. Based on the approval on the invoice, it will be accounted. So by the time I get the approval on the invoice, it may be 2 days, it may be 3 days, it may be a week. After receiving the approval only, invoice will be accounted. If invoice is created or if the purchase took place on 5th December 2023, my document date should always represented by the physical invoice copy. Document type is KR. Company code in which your accounting is 8PSI, Sony India. Now I am recording this invoice today. So today's date will be 9th December. I should put 9th December only. Period is 12. Purchase currency is INR, so that your transaction or document currency is also INR. Next one, reference, I will say pantry items. You may be purchasing pantry items every month. I would say pantry items for December. Same thing I will put pantry items December 2023. So that by looking at this, you will be able to understand how these are to be updated. And you also need to make sure number ranges are created. If you are not getting any error message, that means number range for this company code related to KR document type is updated. If you get number range error, make sure you go to FBN1, update the number range. Now 31, vendor that we created was 8700. Vendor account is on the credit side. Credit is represented by 31 posting key. Enter. And make sure the amount is 5000 there. Input 5000 here. No other information, straight away input this here. Pantry items December 2023. And next one, you need to put a debit to the expense that you purchased. What is the expense account that we created now? I'll open 4-star. I just wanted to see this account called pantry expenses. Enter same amount 5000 and let me put profit center here. The drop down, controlling area is 8 Sony. I'll take first profit center, same text plus. Now let me do a simulation. When you do a simulation, this is what the accounting entry. In this accounting entry, one correction, in the reference column you are supposed to put physical document number or the physical invoice number that is appearing on the vendor invoice. If your vendor invoice is showing invoice number as something like this, you have to put vendor invoice number from the invoice copy in the reference column. And make sure your document is properly given, and your document is balancing at profit center level. As profit center level financial reports are executed. To ensure that, go to document on the top, click on simulate general ledger. Make sure profit center is updated on both the line items, debit and credit. Now how system is bringing profit center for the vendor line item? If you see here, this is not the vendor account, this is the GL account, accounts payable. If I go back one level, here it is giving you Reliance Store. Here it is giving you Reliance Store. If I double click on Reliance Store, there is no place where we have given profit center, because profit center accounting is not applicable for sub ledger. Profit center accounting is applicable only for the main ledger or general ledger. Since vendor is not main ledger, vendor is not general ledger, profit center is not updated. Come back one level and go to document again, click on simulate general ledger. When you click on simulate general ledger, pay attention on profit center field. Make sure profit center field on all the line items. If any line item which is blank for the profit center, your document is not updated, your document will not be posted. As we know, no document is updated or no document is posted without profit center. As part of document splitting functionality, we will make sure each and every accounting entry that is recorded is updated with profit center in every line item. Now it has got two line items, item number 1, item number 2, debit, credit. In all the debits, in all the credits, profit center must be there. To ensure that, do a total for the amount. Select the amount, click on this sum, total. At the document level, total is 0. You should also make sure at the profit center level, total is becoming 0. To do it, select the profit center here and click on the subtotal. Subtotal will be enabled only if total is enabled. Without a total, subtotal will not come. Click on subtotal, and if you collapse the profit center breakup, at the profit center level amount is 0, at the transaction level also amount is 0. And if you go to expert mode on the top, you can see if there is any error in the document or it is error free. Document here does not have any message, which means there is no error, there is no problem in the document. Down below you can see the breakup. Line item number 1, line item number 2. Line item number 2, it is giving us base line item. Line item number 1, it is giving us split according to base row. If I scroll down here, first line item while recording the transaction we have given for vendor. Second line item we have given for GL account. GL account is your baseline item. This is your GL account 422. Profit center is this. And first line item is vendor. Vendor account is split according to base row. If I expand this, it is telling you how did system get the profit center for the vendor line item. It has got the profit center based on the line item number 2, which is this. Whatever the profit center is here, it is copied here. Now this is based on the document splitting. Within the document splitting, you have three type of splitting: active document splitting, passive document splitting, zero balance document splitting. Now this is being split according to active document splitting. Always remember, any vendor invoice, any vendor credit memo that you record, system is going to derive the profit center based on active document splitting functionality from the document splitting. Let me close this, and we understand how amounts are being converted based on the exchange rate. I'm not looking at exchange rate now. I will come back. Let me post the entry now. Now vendor invoice is created. Once vendor invoice is created, you need to make sure this vendor invoice will appear as a liability in the vendor account. Now to see the vendor account, there is a report. Open FBL1N. Vendor number is 8700, company code 8PSI, outstanding as on today. If you click on execute, we know we purchased from Reliance store for 5,000 to be outstanding. You can see vendor line item display is showing 5,000 as outstanding, and this 5,000 is a negative balance. Since you put a credit to the vendor account, vendor line item report is giving you credit balance. Credit is a liability to vendor, we are liable to make the payment. This is point number 1, line item display, which means transaction wise breakup you can see in FBL 1 end report. On the other side, if you want to see only the closing balance of a vendor period wise, for that you have to open FK10N. In FK10N, give your vendor account, company code, fiscal year. If you click on execute, you can see what is the closing balance in vendor account based on the period. Now this is your balance carry forward. In case if there was any outstanding in last year which is rolled over to current year, it will be part of here. From period number 1, period number 10 there is nothing, period number 11 also nothing. In period number 12 it is updated because we are using January to December fiscal year. Accordingly it is displaying December posting in period number 12. 5,000 is the credit posted, and this is the cumulative balance, and this is the YTD balance. 5,000 you are able to see. Third report that you can see is for all the vendors collectively, you can see the what is the current outstanding based on FBL 1H. If you go to FBL 1H, select your vendor account, company code. If you leave the supplier account blank and if you run the report, it will give you the current outstanding based on each vendor account. Whatever the vendors are available, for all the vendors, system is going to fetch the current outstanding. Okay, this is how it is showing. Only one vendor is available, 8700. Current outstanding is 5,000. If you have 100 vendors, thousands of vendors, in one go you can see for every vendor what is the current outstanding. Instead of looking at one by one, it will only give you the cumulative figures, in short, current outstanding in each vendor account. These reports you have to understand. Step number 1, to create this one, and step number 2, create vendor invoice using T code F-43 we've used. You can also use FB60. And step number 3, display vendor report using T code FBL 1N, FK10N, and the third one which we used was FBL 1H. These are the three transactions that you have to see first, and then as part of your initial understanding of accounts payable, make sure you follow the same sequence. Understand what is accounts payable and revise whatever we discussed in the previous session. Understand the generic accounts payable from the finance point of view, and then also understand accounts payable from the purchasing point of view. In short, purchase order, P2P cycle. Only after understanding P2P cycle, all these things, come to accounts payable, do the configuration. Don't straight away start accounts payable, because in real environment in any project you don't configure that way. You need to have initial understanding, and then when you do the configuration, you are able to connect, you are able to understand different points that are going to help you understand client requirements, client issues, errors that they are reporting on a daily basis. And revise all these things, whatever the way we adopted, in the similar way you understand, and pick any one account group in your company code, maintain the configuration. After that, take any one example like this and make sure you are able to create the master, you are able to create the respective GL account master, post the vendor invoice, display the vendor line items based on the 3 transaction codes that we have listed, so that you are clear with the basic accounts payable configuration and vendor master creation, vendor document posting, in short the invoice, vendor report display. This is the basic fundamental thing that has to be understood from AP perspective. Once these points are clear, we are going to focus on different scenarios that are to be executed from AP perspective. Let's say in what ways you are going to create the purchase invoice, and how you are going to look at different vendor reports, and how you are going to connect credit memos to invoice, what are all the other parameters, how due dates are coming, what are payment methods, what are payment terms, what are the different modes of payment, cash payment, bank payment, check payment, how you are going to block the invoice, duplicate check, all these kind of things we will be executing as part of a scenarios. But to execute any scenario, this is the base fundamental. You have to be strong till here. Only then the different scenarios you will be able to understand with respect to accounts payable. Now any questions only to the extent of accounts payable you can ask, so that when you refer the recording you will not get confused with other questions related to apart from what we have discussed now. Tejas?
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Sir, you just mentioned that business partner number is internal and the vendor number is an external. So, sir, is there any logic behind that, or is it just like a standard practice that we are following in practical world?
There's no logic, it is a standard, because in order to create any customer or any vendor in S4 HANA system, BP concept has been introduced. BP must be created first. Only after BP you can create vendor. So the sequence
Okay.
is straightforward: BP first, vendor or customer next. Agree?
Yes.
So when you're creating a BP first, system is going to allot a number for BP, correct?
Yes.
So the first number should always be internal. Whatever is the next available number in the business partner, that is to be allotted. In order the next
Okay.
number to get allotted, you have to follow internal numbering system.
Yes.
So we are
Got it.
assigning internal number range there, and to the same business partner, we are going to assign vendor role, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you're creating a vendor, it is not a standalone vendor. This vendor is derived from the existing BP, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, for the existing BP, there is already a number. When you're converting this BP into a vendor, you need to make sure the same number will be allotted to vendor also, so that there is no confusion. If I am telling vendor number is 1, BP number is 5, it is always creating a confusion. One
Yes, sir.
person having two master records, two master data number. So that is to be
Yes.
avoided. To avoid that, you are going to always follow external number range for the vendor. So how this external number range will work? Whenever you are converting a BP to a vendor number to be allotted. Now vendor is converted based on the existing BP.
Yes.
Now the existing BP is already holding a number,
Yes. Internally. Yeah.
right? Now that
Yeah.
number is blindly taken as vendor number because of the external means you can manually feed the number, correct?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So system is manually feeding that BP number into vendor column because vendor number range is external.
Okay. So, sir, is the same logic is applied if any of the country is required to maintain a different account group in terms of the vendor, like in different number range. So, same logic is applied.
Yes, same logic as we discussed.
Okay.
This is not country specific, this is
Okay.
client specific.
Okay. Got it, sir.
So irrespective of
Yeah.
any company code, it's a one time configuration,
Okay.
ready to
So
use,
even
plug and play
yes.
for any company code.
Okay. So even though, sir, company code have a two different account group, the business partner would be only the one, and which is which is internally generated number range.
Right.
Okay. And sir, another question is, I'm not sure whether it is related to current lecture. So, sir, as of now, you are creating the invoices based on the without any purchase order. So, sir, is there any configuration in which we need to, select the purchase order and close the purchase order and again generate the invoices by closing purchase order?
That is as part of your FIMM integration. Once we are thorough with the FI portion of the accounts payable, we will be defining integration setting, for which we will be defining MM configuration, and then we will be creating a purchase order. We will run the full cycle there. There you will
Okay.
understand it.
Okay. So is it going to be covered into the next upcoming lectures?
Yes, we will be covering
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay, sir. Thank you. And sir, last one. Sorry. So, sir, the way you are creating the vendor group. So, sir, is it possible that in local vendor it might be creating raw material vendor, work in progress vendor, finished goods vendor, etc. like that?
You can create it, but you need to make sure if these are all part of local vendor, you have to create a single reconciliation account. And you can
Okay.
assign the same reconciliation account in all the vendors that are created under your raw material group or whatever the group that you have. You need to group
Okay,
it
sir.
from the purchasing point of view. You should also group it from the financial point of view. Your raw material WIP is from the purchasing point of view, correct? To identify what we are
Yes.
purchasing, what is the nature of
Yes.
vendor. And
Yes.
this is to be mapped along with your financial also. Financial in the sense, in financial, you are going to say raw material vendor, finished material vendor, WIP vendor. No, you are going to say local vendor.
Okay.
In financials,
Yes.
it is not required. Agree?
Yes. Yes.
So in financials, you are going to put everything under one reconciliation account called domestic payables or local vendor payable. Whatever the account group that you are creating, make sure the account groups you are able to group from the finance point of view. Accordingly, the appropriate GL account is assigned.
Okay. So, sir, just like you right now created into the 2410, the subgroup like local, foreign, etc. So, I need to, if I want to create raw material vendor or finished good vendor, I need to give the local vendor as a group, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anjaneyulu.
My question also relating to this external account number register. Can you please go to that BP number register screen? BP number register.
Okay.
Our I
Sorry,
mean
our number range.
our number we have given this external number tick mark.
This one.
This is relating to BP, sir.
This is BP. BP is internal. Vendor is
Okay,
external.
okay, okay. I thought that was the reverse. I think
No, no.
this will
Because BP is.
automatically.
Go ahead.
But this one. But this one, see here, sir, 8709 is taken, sir. Number,
No,
vendor
this
stream.
is because somebody has already created it. Later on, they deleted the number. That is why it will take like this. It will skip. If it is
So
skipping
you
from
have given this.
8701 to 8709, in the server, somebody had already used that number, and later on that is deleted. So in the backend database, that number will be updated, and then it cannot be removed from there. So these points you will get only in the test system, not in the real system. Now, though you have created a vendor here, you can still delete this number range from here. If I delete this number range from here, in the backend table, this number 8701 or 8700 already utilized. Agree? So if you define this, if you delete this setting from the backend, it will not be removed. So that is why it will always take the next number which is unused. And this will not happen in the real project, in the real system, because there, whatever the number you create, only that number will be there.
Okay, for business partner it is internal. For vendor it is external, right?
Correct.
Thanks. I thought
Yeah.
this one this opposite. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Bharani, Divyanjali.
Sir, We are assigning the reconciliation account for local vendors, I mean for each account group, right? So if our client have two company codes, one in US and one in India, so the reconciliation account which we assign for local vendors, that recon account will be same for both the company codes. I mean for US and
Yeah, it is the same. Normally, what will happen when you create the GL account, you are first creating the GL account at chart of account level, correct?
yes, sir.
And then you are going to extend the GL account to the company code level. Now, if your India company code, I am a US company code. Now, I have a vendor who is within US. You have a vendor who is within India. For you, your India vendor is a local vendor. For me, US vendor is a local vendor, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
In my company code, I will assign same GL account called local vendor. In your company code, you will assign the same GL called local vendor. On the other side, if we swap the vendor, you are having US vendor, I am having India vendor. For your India company code, US vendor is a foreign vendor.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now, in your company code for foreign vendor, you may be having accounts payable foreign. For my company code, the same GL account will be there. So I am going to assign accounts payable foreign. You are also going to assign accounts payable foreign. And this classification is at the company code level. So there is no point of, the confusion, or there is no point of data getting duplicated or incorrect records getting captured.
Okay. 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 Yeah, I have that doubt only, sir. The data get
Yeah,
duplicated, right? I mean, okay.
it will not get
So,
duplicated because of the company code filter.
okay. Sir, this group reporting will be done now, sir. Then how they do that?
In group reporting, it is based on the GL account.
Okay.
So
Okay.
group reporting is always out of SAP. Out of SAP in the sense, either you will be using BPC, or you will be using SAC, or we will be using some third party applications. So where
Oh,
we are going to extract the trial balance from SAP, based on the trial balance, you are going to group all the GL accounts from all the company
oh,
codes.
okay.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. Yeah. Got it, sir. Thank you.
yeah. All right. Any other questions related to this?
Sir, I have
All
one,
right.
but related to BRS.
I'll take your question after stopping this recording, so that it will not create confusion those who are referring the recording. Okay, fine then. So if there are no questions, let me stop the recording so that we can discuss your other questions.
Ajay, please.